Još jednom dobar dan svima i dobrodošli na miksovani večernji i debatni program Festivala KROKODIL. Nadam se da uživate i nadam se da ćete uživati u ostatku našeg programa što ovde, što večeras na glavnoj bini u fontani. Želela bih da otvorim jedan važan razgovor. Zapravo ovim razgovorom i otvaram jednu programsku celinu. To ću reći. Dakle, ovim razgovorom, kao što verovatno već znate, ćemo otvoriti jednu celu programsku celinu Krokodila. Ono što smatramo da je jako važno, čime imamo obavezu i odgovornost da se bavimo u godinama koje dolaze, to su ono što možda neki razumeju, možda neki ne, dezinformacije, fake news i sve ono što primamo kroz različite vrste medija, a što menja naše osnovno kognitivno znanje, sve ono u što smo verovali da je dobro, odjednom nije, sve ono što smo voleli ne treba da volimo i kao da nam se nameće sasvim novi sistem vrednosti koji nam nije poznat, pa veliki broj ljudi od toga ima neprijatnost i strah. A mnogo veći broj ljudi u Srbiji čini nam se da to ni ne primećuje. Naša namera je da umesto da držimo akademski elaborat o tome šta to znači dezinformacija, jer evo, ako vas sada pitam, svako bi imao neko svoje mišljenje i verovatno bismo došli do toga da je to filozofsko pitanje gde će svako ima svoj odgovor. Ja sam sad pokušala da vam objasnim koja je naša namera, pa sa tim u vezi se i ovaj panel zove Fake News from the Past. Hvala Dubravki Stojanović na nazivu, naše inače članice upravnog odbora. I pokušat ćemo da se ovoj temi posvetimo u potpunosti na jedan način koji i deca i mladi i građani mogu da razumeju i promišljaju. Razgovor danas će se dešavati na engleskom jeziku. Nadam se da ćete moći da pratite. U slučaju da imate pitanja, ako vam treba pomoć sa engleskim, vi nam recite. So I made the introduction. Thank you very much for being with us today. Milijanom Rogač from Istinomera, thank you so much. Jasnom Lambert, did I say it right, surname? Okay. Arnonom Grunbergom, very warm welcome. Dubravkom Stojanović, again, but please do not mind. She has something to say today. And Anom Martinoli, our good friend, colleague, and professor of the University in Belgrade. In order not to talk any more and any further, I would like to start with the questions. So we'll have a round of questions, and then I will do the cross-cutting questions to you based on what you answered in the first round. Are you happy with that? Okay. So I will start from Jasna, you. Okay. When I said in my introduction, you could understand in Serbian that we want to talk about the attempt to change our cognitive thinking and knowledge. That is something that both me and Dubravka, we actually stole from you. We heard it, we developed this program together, and this is something that we've stolen. What did you mean by this?
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to speak first in such a wonderful panel, and I'll try to be very short and please ask questions. I have been dealing with the issue of disinformation for the last 6 years. That was my life for the last 6 years, but even analyzing it from before. And I did it with working for the European Union that has a global effort and honestly has done the most in so many ways to tackle this issue, because we saw this is really aiming to destroy democracies, and we have a union which is a union of democracies. If you destroy our democratic societies, we will not have it. So we took it as a priority. I think explaining why is very important. And then we realized that we engaged in all sorts of awareness-raising activities, resilience-building activities, regulating big platforms, all of it. And while doing all of this valuable work, fact-checking, supporting civil society, all the things that you have heard of, I realized this is not enough, because we are only reaching with all of this with people that still didn't drink the Kool-Aid of disinformation and information manipulation. And that there is some cognitive framing, this is how I, after doing the research, that is happening before that makes this information stick. So you can analyze, so why? Because understanding how our brain works is automatically rejects what doesn't fit into previously existing beliefs. So I really got into how our brain works, how our perception forms, how much our knowledge, because imagine, people don't question, how do I know what I know? People don't question the epistemology of their knowledge, as they say. They just receive the information, fits into previous beliefs. If it fits, they take it. If it doesn't, it bounces back. And I got passionately interested into this, how this cognitive reference is formed, who frames our understanding of the world. And I don't want to talk too long, but education is critical, media is critical, art is critical, the cultural field. And I was very much interested in Dubravka. I called Dubravka when I heard that she's working about this book. And I asked her, can this explain why certain people in the Western Balkans buy certain narratives and others don't? And this is how we got into this thing.
A small sub-question. There is this video that while we were researching the topic, there is this video developed by a European Commission, and it says, if you received information, there is just person addressing the audience, and she says, if you received information and you feel fear, sad, or you feel in any way uncomfortable, think about the source.
This is the essence, because a huge part of information manipulation and disinformation is related to emotions. That because our perceptions are affected by our emotions. This is another, there is also a huge science behind. We have a sensory impact, then that goes in neurosignal, it goes to the brain, how the brain interprets that information, and that goes the previous knowledge, and emotion. And interpretation also very much depends on emotion and on your motivation. So you will sometimes see that a person is certainly motivated to interpret certain information in a certain way. So it is really, knowledge is very important for this, previous knowledge is very important for our capacity to be resilient to this information or to simply swallow it, which is why this work and what the school does, or the national segment of national subject, geography, language, and history, are critical in how we see the world and how we interpret the world around us. This is really one step back from the whole industry of fighting disinformation at the moment, that I think and this panel is, I think, among the rare ones to raise it, so I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Mr. Grunberg, I had a chance some days ago to ask you, have you read The Doppelganger by Naomi Klein? I don't know if any one of you had a chance to read this book. So in this book particularly, I wanted to stress one quote. She says, large-scale shocks, she was referring to coronavirus pandemics, so large-scale shocks that scramble our collective synapses lead to mass regression and turn humans into the easy prey for demagogues. Can you comment on this? And do you think that we are facing a global information war that goes in line with the collapse of the concept of liberal democracy, as Jasna mentioned, after all the large-scale shocks in the past 4 years?
Yeah, many questions in one question. I haven't read the book, but of course I know what's about. And I would say that it's not only because of disasters, whether it's COVID or war, that people are an easy prey for disinformation. If you look back at the history of mankind, there's always been disinformation, and people are easily seduced. And it's a way of seducing people, of course. if you look at how politicians, I'm just focusing now on the Western Europe, on the US, if you look at Donald Trump or what's happening in the Netherlands, where the right-wing party, the PVV, where the leader is Geert Wilders, won the elections, became the biggest party, by focusing on migration and on asylum seekers. And this is like a theme that's very seductive. Whether you look at France, where it's Marine Le Pen does it, Donald Trump does it in the US, Geert Wilders does it in the Netherlands.
But Netherlands has one of the cutting-edge strategies for fighting disinformation. They invested so much. They're like role models. What happens there?
But because, well, we thought maybe, the Dutch people thought maybe that they were the most tolerant, enlightened people in the world. But of course, this is not the case. And also, education is important, but it's not going to be a miracle medicine against disinformation. Because also, if you look at what people vote and where they come from, also highly educated people are susceptible and can be seduced. So it's not going to be, we will always have disinformation. And of course, after COVID, when war, people are looking for certainty. Many people are looking for certainty. And there is this seductive idea that we can call a conspiration theory, whatever you want to call it, that explains everything. And if I can add one more thing, there's a German philosopher, Hanno Sauer, who wrote recently a book on morality. And in this book, he has a very interesting observation. He says it's useless to fight people who believe in disinformation with facts. It is not going to help. But because the more outrageous the claim is, let's say what's happening, or Earth is flat, or within 10 years, all people in the Netherlands will be Muslims, which is, of course, outrageous, complete. But the more outrageous it is, the more people, when they believe in it, they invested in it, and they form a community. So the goal of this outrageous disinformation is also it's like not only fake information, it's also an alternative religion. And the Netherlands, of course, has become one of the most secular countries in the world. But this secularization only led to alternative forms of religion. And then when it comes to God, of course, there's no way you cannot discuss somebody who believes in God. You cannot talk. It is useless whether he exists or not. And exactly the same system is working also when it comes to political beliefs, ideologies.
Now you sound like some of your characters.
Why?
And my further question for you will be, how do we combat that? How do we fight? And is there a will among Dutch citizens to just...
I think it's very hard. Just look again at elections, what's happening when you see also at the polls, what's happening in the US, what's happening everywhere. It's very hard. There's no easy way fighting it. And also I think you have to accept the nature. I think we cannot change mankind. So there is always, and what we are doing, I think, for example, speaking of the EU, one of the best things that happened to the EU and the popularity in the Netherlands, but also many other places, was Brexit. After Brexit, suddenly that was like really a miracle for suddenly many people in the Netherlands, also on the right, they thought Nexit, we want Nexit. After Brexit, Nexit disappeared.
Thank you very much. Dubravka, does historical revisionism represent a perfect tool when you have a fertile soil in Serbia for the wide dissemination of disinformation today?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm really sorry that I'm talking the whole day, but this was supposed to be yesterday. No, the previous one was supposed to be yesterday. And we were discussing with Jasna a lot this cognitive framework, and I like very much the way you interpret it and explained it. But the question is how to make the cognitive framework, how to succeed. And that's why we are talking about fake news from the past, because I think that history is the best and the easiest way. Because if we use only the present, it's much more complicated, because then there are people in Serbia that are pro-Vučić, against Vučić, pro-opposition, who knows what. It's much more complicated. But then, if a huge majority of your intellectual elite explains to you that you are a people victim, that you are a heroic victim, that everybody is against us, that no one understands us, that we are alone in the world, that we are poor, that everything is against us, this is something that creates huge emotions. So I think that exactly through emotions, this is the easiest way to make this cognitive framework, which then helps the whole understanding of the society, of politics, of everything. So the question that you just put to Mr. Grunberg is how to answer. I think that we have to answer with positive emotions, because as a historian, I'm somehow totally desperate because I see that the facts, historical facts, they just don't work. Because you know that exactly 8,000, I don't know how much exactly people were genocided in Srebrenica. And so what? No one just don't believe that. They just say, well, this is the fake news. So the facts are not the answer. Rationality is not the answer. And I'm afraid that this happened because of neoliberalism, that believed that emotions are not important in human society, that everything is on the market, that everything has its own price, and that everything will be settled on the market. That people are rational, that they will just see their own interest, and that's it. Unfortunately, the same thing as Germany in 1930s, it showed that emotions are much more important for politics. And I think that thanks to neoliberalism, we had that huge trap of rationalism, which now turned into an extreme emotionalism of extreme right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is also why we have a crisis of empathy as well around the globe. And that is also one of the questions that we raise quite often. Anna, Dubravka was mentioning about the history, and we escaped, and now it comes to you to talk about youth and young people. Do they recognize this information? Do they know anything about it? And in the region, Europe and globally, we talk about media literacy. Do we locally know what media literacy is? Do we introduce it now? Can it help in any way? So the question is, to summarize, you work with young people at university, as Dubravka does as well. And do they have any clue about the information they receive? And what are you doing to tackle this? Or is this topic at all at the Belgrade University at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. First of all, I'm very glad to see some of our, I hope, future students in the audience. Yes.
Oh man, you are here.
Yeah. So maybe we can have a comment from them in the end. But maybe I can start with something that I wanted to say in the end. But when you say digital and media literacy, I'm very proud to say on behalf of Faculty of Drama Arts that starting last year, we actually introduced completely new course on our undergraduate studies, which is called Digital and Media Literacy. Now, that is just one layer, I think, that we can tackle the problem that you've been talking about, and that is the formal education. Because when we talk about that infamous Gen Z, which are actually people that we call digital natives, they don't know anything before internet. They were actually born into internet and digital tools and digital services. That's very specific and very complicated generation, actually, because on one hand you have young people that are not very afraid of technical innovation. They are very familiar with the digital tools, the social networks, and everything, so they don't have that kind of rejection that we older might have. But on the other hand, they sometimes lack I wouldn't say knowledge, but I think maybe awareness that not all the content is useful and credible. So that's something that you just have to work.
Where do they find credibility in information they receive? This is a difficult question.
Yeah,
you can say I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. But there's for example, there's been a few research that's been done, for example, in Serbia, and what we know is that especially young people, Gen Z, 18 to 25 years old, when you ask them which news sources do you trust, it's more than 80% of them say it's personal contact. So it's family, it's friends, and other things. But, sorry. No, please.
So there is a research of COMS, which is umbrella.
Yes.
We were just yesterday talking about that, the annual actually report on youth, because it is umbrella association of all the youth associations. So over there, they say that they first get information. Yesterday, we talked about it in their homes, and then big gap, and then social media. So we need to think about, and then further school. So when we talk about the attempts, at least in Serbia, how to tackle, we need to work with the approach top down.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you just have to sort of connect other points of not just education, but also information, entertainment, etc. For example, when you ask young people, where do you get news? They say social media, but do you go deliberately to find some news? They say, no, we don't. So they actually get the news through entertainment, through communication with their friends, with their peers, and through influencers as well, which is another source of information relevant. Is it fortunately or unfortunately, it's something that we can discuss further. But those are actually the sources for them. On the other hand, what we know right now, for example, there's been very close monitoring of whole information process in Europe before the elections for the European Parliament. And what they actually found out is that the information that we are getting from our family, peers, friends, etc., is very often disinformation. So that's another side of the problem. So we are sort of stepping down from turning to media, official media channels for news. We are relying on our close contacts, family, friends. But on the other hand, that can also be potentially source of disinformation and not credible, not relevant news for young people.
So if we want to make any kind of impact, this is something that we already knew in KROKODIL. We need to go to small local places, sit in kafana and talk to people. Miliana, you dedicated your work to fact-checking. I can only imagine how your job is difficult when we see that all tools that everyone was using and we were relying on are just falling apart. Where are you now with it? What do we do? We just mentioned credibility. It's easy for us to talk like this and say where young people find credibility information. And when I ask you this, you're like, do you have answer for this? And yeah,
it's complicated. Thank you, Mila. It's complicated, yes. And there is no one easy solution and no a button we can push and then have a solution. So if I just can follow up what Ana said, and we have a lot of news avoidance in Serbia, which is another problem and can be a part of the puzzle because people are running away from the news, which I can understand because we have a crisis and producing of fear and fog on a daily level. And when we talk about disinformation, as we all could hear before, disinformation is a small piece of manipulation packed in some pink paper, but behind that, it's a deeply rooted message and emotion. Yes, as a fact checker, so we can see that. And one of the most common stories or emotions or narratives we can see on a daily level on social media, on public channels, in media, hearing from politicians also, it's like West is the bad, destroying the family, we are the victims, of course, fighting against the world, and someone is trying to destroy our family. That's the baseline. So when we talk about media literacy and what can we do ourselves, there are like two sides of the story. One is, young people, yes, maybe they know the tools, but they don't know how to recognize propaganda technique. They don't have the knowledge to do that. So there's a side of the story. We do need more theory and knowledge about the propaganda because we are exposed to it on a daily level.
How ordinary people here can recognize propaganda?
Well, for example, they can choose what media to follow, you know. If we explain on a daily level, okay, if someone appears on a daily level almost every day in the public as a politician, that's a technique exhausting the public. It's very effective and it has a name and it's not here, it didn't made up here. I mean, it's, you know, commonly used. And the consequence of that is people avoiding the channels and avoiding the content. So that's one side of the story, like theory of the propaganda, and another side are tools. And it's getting complicated even more with tools because tools are not enough. I mean, with the AI-generated content, there is more on everyday level. We don't have enough tools, enough good tools to say this is like 100% false for some kind of content. So we are in problem also as fact checkers, you know. And that's one of the parts of the problem, creating even more fog. Because when I think about our citizen today, it's like a person standing in the forest in a fog, not knowing what to do, trying to escape with news avoidance. So what can we do? Yes, there are so many layers: education, history, art, media. We can try as a journalist, as a professionals, to try to, yes, to name the techniques, to give them tools, to give them skills. Whenever I talk with someone young or older, people say to me, I think I need more education, like, but not in a formal way. Like, I need more names, I need language to identify what's happening, because it's confusing and it's not easy for all of us.
Media literacy has been introduced from civil society to education in entire Europe. I must put on a political level the articulation of this conversation now and talk about Western Balkans. In Serbia, we do not have not even one media, let's say, where you can, with national frequency, where you can hear anything different from what the current government is telling us. When you have media dark, as we do have in Serbia, it's really difficult to start this kind of talks. You've been, Jasno, yourself following Western Balkans, not only Serbia, but all Western Balkans countries, and yourself, you've been working in Brussels on this topic. Has any progress has been made in Serbia when it comes to media literacy, or any attempt to fight this wave of disinformation that just took over our population without even anyone recognizing it, and then asking what is finally truth?
Maybe just also to say, I like to talk about information literacy, because this manipulation goes beyond media. This is very important to understand. I don't know when I'm going to have an opportunity to talk to this wonderful audience, so I want to mention that. This is also part of the media literacy.
Special lecture.
This is also part of the information literacy thing. So that's one thing. What we have seen over the around the Western Balkans, that efforts have been made. So in some countries more than the others. That is always linked. There is almost a correlation between the government's willingness to democratize the society, advance on the process of joining the EU, hence also media literacy in school. And different models have been introduced, and I would say the situation is better in some parts of the region. What is really important to understand, first of all, information literacy is not, as we discussed here, it's not the only solution, but it's a significant part of the solution. What is important is that critical thinking and information literacy has to be mainstreamed. This is not one subject in the curriculum. It has to be mainstreamed, and I have been researching all over free and democratic world, where I saw that people are really have resilience to information manipulation. These are the countries where critical thinking and information literacy is mainstreamed everywhere. And it's pushed in the formal education, informal education, media, and so on. This is really a supply and demand. This is also for the citizens to demand this. But what I really want to say, maybe because I don't want to talk too much, it is really high time. What even in developed countries we see is that young people do not engage with traditional journalism anymore. We heard about it also in Serbia. What is even worse, that there is a massive manipulation of history happening on social media and online, and young people rely almost exclusively on that. So they learn history by watching YouTube clips. They cannot hear from professors like Dubravka. And also what is also happening that the number of graduates in history, this is what I'm happy to hear, future professors of history is rapidly dropping. This is not attractive to young people. And just to finish on a super scary note, young people, and this is the research that I have access to recently, they don't even bother to type in a question to Google or somewhere else in order to learn about something. They ask ChatGPT. Artificial intelligence is coming. Another layer of industrial manipulation and shaping what people think is coming. We should take this issue very, very seriously. I cannot go into all of these details, but information literacy is absolutely critical, and people like Dubravka and competent people being online, because content is the king.
Dubravka knows this story when ChatGPT started off. I wanted to ask him one question that they always ask young people when they come to KROKODIL Center, and that is whether Ratko Mladić is alive or dead. Do you know? Tell me. Of course, 100% of them, they say he's dead, he's alive. Of course. No, don't bother. It is always the same answer that we receive from young people. So I wanted to ask ChatGPT when started off first day, I remember, in our office, whether he's dead or alive. ChatGPT said that he's dead, and it gave us the time and place and the date when he died, referring to what Jasna has just mentioned. And then we pushed really hard to change it in algorithm. So regarding the algorithm, Arnon, do you think I have a question to you that just Dubravka was saying? You live in United States and you live in Netherlands and vice versa. Do you think that history education can be a tool? No. I know why I'm asking this. Do you think that education, for example, can be one of the tools to tackle disinformation in the Netherlands?
Not only in the Netherlands. Of course, it can be one of the tools. But as I said before, I think we should not have our expectations should not be too high. It's not like a miracle ointment. And also I'd like to add, because we talk a lot about young people moving away from traditional media. A few days ago, there was a report about people reading newspapers in the EU, and it's among all ages that people are turning away from, like, let's say, traditional media like the newspapers, and going to influencers or to other TikTok to find information. And what does this mean? This means that, like, you have a journalist, he's an expert. It's the same you can compare to somebody who has problems with his teeth. And instead of going to a dentist, he's going to a cafe and asks the waiter, can you help me with my teeth? That's the comparison. So there is this, and of course a journalist can fail, a dentist can fail. Some dentists are not that good. But like the distrust, the idea that it's like a big conspiracy, the elite. The elite is a word that you can find, I'm not sure about Serbia, but again in all Western countries, it's the elite that's against us. So, and of course education can help, but also I'm not sure, Dubravka mentioned, and we almost totally agree, but there was one minor detail.
About the failure of neoliberal. That was my sub-question. Please comment on that.
But no, also on the emotions. Because I do think it was not only neoliberalism, first of all, that put high trust in rationality. It was the whole project of enlightenment. Enlightenment thought that we are human beings, that we are rational, from Kant, from all the big philosophers. And of course we are not, and then Freud came and taught us we are not all the time rational, and we cannot expect to be all the time rational. So I'm not sure that we can fight, and of course this is a very powerful emotion. If you tell people, not only in Serbia, wherever, you have been betrayed by the people. You've been victim for all the time. Everybody's against you because so many people feel disappointed by life. Life so often is disappointing, and no government can help, can turn this away, can solve this big, huge problem of life. And it's very, very tempting to believe in it. Also, I think there's one word that I was missing in this conversation is the disinformation is a tool. It's not a goal. It's a tool to obtain certain political goals. And if you look at the seducers, I'd like to call them seducers, in many places, whether it's in the US again or in France, they have this messiah-like figure. So I think people in these days, they are looking for a messiah figure. And often it's a politician that is seducing them, and fake news is just a tool in order to make the seduction more powerful, in order to obtain certain political goals.
Dubravka, you come from science. And when Arnon is saying such things, and you as a professor, how would you reflect on this? I'm sorry, I need to ask you this. You're a scientist and you believe in science and the facts. And when we talk about the tools that the other side is using, that we need to think about these and use them as well. We need to think about the credibility and the ethics and moral, and it brings you to a difficult position. I know this is a difficult question for you, but...
No, it is difficult, of course, but we are thinking about it for a long time, because on one hand, as scientists, as historians or social scientists, we need facts. This is our job. We need the research. We need to come to the facts in order to know what we are talking about. But what we are talking about here are the new tools, exactly, how to work with the facts that we have out of our sciences. Because as it seems, the old tools are out. Books, newspapers, TV, news, everything is out of fashion. So now we have to think how to reach out, how to compete with all those new technologies. And the problem is that we are thinking about, and we are, the old generation. So we don't understand the generations. So what to create in order to reach this generation or the next generation. But for example, you know, and maybe somebody of you know, that we made this, Igor Štiks, Dejan Ubović and me, that we made this exhibition, The Labyrinth of the 90s, last year in Belgrade. And this year we are in Sarajevo at the Historical Museum for 4 months. And I really believe that we did find the new language, and it's the language of emotion. So it is the exhibition. It's the exhibition about the 90s. Facts are there. All the facts are there. But the lights, colors, materials, etc., are only focused on emotions. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is something that we have to think and to rethink, how to place the facts.
So we need a completely new age of new work, let's say, to develop for communicologists, to develop communication strategies. When it comes to content, you really nice and elaborated on the content. But in communications science, you have something that is content is just there, but you need channels, you need tools. When you're developing communication strategy, one of the channels is radio that Anna is putting in focus as a good tool to communicate, because it's when you are listening to podcasts or radio, you use only one sense, that is hearing. And can you tell me now we talked about the content, which channels can we use?
Well, I think that we can return to that old saying that you have to go where your audience is, I guess. So even though the whole environment is changing, some strategies just don't. So we cannot neglect the fact that our audience is on TikTok, on Snapchat, on Discord, etc. Be real, something new. I don't know how it works. Be real, yeah, I know. Heard it from a 12-year-old. So, yeah. But I think that we just have to think how to engage young audience more, because what they expect is interactivity and collaboration. Engagement is something that is sort of a standard for them. It's something that they are used to, and when you tell them you have to learn something, it's not enough just to come to the classroom and just speak for 45 minutes. You just have to come up with some new ways of spreading the knowledge and actually sort of including them into producing some content that might be educational, because young generations are very much sensitive to being producer as well, like not just using content but also producing it, because it's everyday thing for them. I mean, they every day actually produce something. So I think that we just have to first of all start learning how they communicate with the content, because when it comes to news, for example, when you ask young people, do you like to be informed, they say, yeah, okay, information is important, but we just turn to information only when it does not actually jeopardize our entertainment time, our communication time, and things like that. So information and being in contact with everyday events and news is not something that they actually prioritize, because they actually feel that digital overload, on the other hand, because they are sort of just suffocated with lots of content, lots of stuff all around. So they become sort of desensitized to everything that actually comes to contact with them.
Miliana, last question, and then we have 10 minutes for audience to make their questions. So Istinomer is doing fact-checking every day. We are following your videos, whether this is truth, and how do you check how you develop content to say, this is not truth, this happened and this happened, and we do trust Istinomer, right?
Thank you.
I mean, myself.
Yeah. I
What do you do? How do you fact check? How do you find the information that you know that is not true in order to develop this content? And how will you communicate that to the audiences that just use this tool as a raising awareness but not engaged? This is the difficult part.
Yeah. I understand, yeah. Well, first of all, Istinomer is fact-checking politician claims, social claims on social media, and also you're doing a media analysis. So how do we find it? The first criteria is public interest. It has to be important and influential subject. And second thing about the social media claims, it has to be in some kind viral. So we have tools to see what's happening on social media. Is it important or not? Yeah, it's available for public. So that's like the technical part. And how do we do it? Yeah, it's a long process, but it has to be like relevant. We are trying not to give strength to the lie that it's not visible, but the ones that are visible. So in order to fact check and show that what we done, we even are going to TikTok. So yeah, a year ago we made our channel, and it's growing, and we are trying to explain what we're doing in short videos, explaining the disinformation, and it's happening. Journalists have that kind of attitude to social media, like TikTok, it's stupid. Like, it's not stupid. If people are there, we have to go there, and we have to analyze the market and to adjust and to be concise and short and clear. And sometimes we.
Do you use TikTok with Istinomer?
Yes. And it's doing like fine for now. Yeah, it's growing. And when I talk with my colleagues about the young people, they are just part of the problems, because if we hear like they're consulting the family, I'm not going to say it's a problem, but it's not a source. It's not a good source, because when we had the Corona crisis, one of the people who were talking disinformation were also doctors. There are no immune parts of the society immune to disinformation, and there are also educated people, also older one, also young one. Like, we need to find approach for all of them.
Okay, thank you so much. Arnold, yes, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah, one small remark. There's something that really bothered me. I don't believe that books are out of fashion. And I don't think, no, seriously, I don't. And I think it's also an underestimation. We talk about the young people as if it's one group that are all alike. There are also young people who turn to books. It's not only TikTok. And also I do believe that if we think we can replace Dostoevsky by YouTube or TikTok, we might as well give up on liberal democracy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much about this remark. And that is also my perception for those who are now 4, 5, 6 years old. They're really into books, like old-fashioned books. But we will have time to articulate that generation when they give the audiobooks as well, yeah. No, this really little ones, they're into books, but we will have a chance when they give the alphabet.
Books will be different.
Yeah. When they become Gen something, we will have a chance to further articulate. We have 10 minutes. Please go ahead with a question. No, because we are recording, you need a microphone.
Okay, thank you, hvala, ook heel bedankt, Arno. My question is about artificial intelligence. You have touched upon the subject, but briefly. And it is a thing about numbers, about public. I've recently discovered a thing on Reddit where a chatbot has been created to generate random nonsense that would figure in as sort of realistic content. As it is an answering machine, Reddit as such, not something that would be as popular as Twitter or TikTok. But considering the effects of AI and factoring in things like the lack of attention, the attention span that has come to a deficit in younger generations, do you think that we eventually are losing pace, even though if we're fighting or choosing to fight against the bad effects of AI, do you think that we're losing pace, considering all the negative effects of the lack of education as such, specifically humanities, and otherwise also the lack of good media and media literacy with young people? No, the question is towards everybody that could answer this. I mean, it's open.
Because young man was waiting for you last night for 2 hours, so I thought it was the. Please, who wants to answer this one?
I will.
Go ahead, Jasna.
I mean,
Thank you so much.
No problem. Because I mentioned artificial intelligence. I mean, this is something definitely that we should not be scared of, but it requires regulation. But regulation is not enough. I always say regulation plus education. I happen to know that, I mean, the EU is the only one that has tried to regulate. We have Artificial Intelligence Act trying to get the negative effects of the artificial intelligence. But are we losing the pace at the moment? I have a feeling that people do not understand how the algorithms work. So this is the part of this information literacy that I would like to see. People are not aware that everybody can be manipulated. We think when we ask people, are you aware about this information? They say, oh, yes. And the number of people in the Western Balkans has been growing. And awareness is there. But when you test some of the narratives, disinformation narratives on them, you saw that they swallowed them. They are not, because it is difficult for us to accept that we are the ones who are manipulated, who got manipulated and believe something that is not true. So it is, and those willing to manipulate information really go into these areas of cognition and intervene at critical time, from the kindergarten, and they follow us all the way. The advertising industry knows it, communication specialist knows it, but also this kind of evil kind of business with the specific goals in mind goes into hacking of our brains at critical points. What I'm saying is that artificial intelligence is just on the top of all of this, because it picks everything that is available online. I'm massively worried about this industrial manipulation of historical facts that is happening online. There are increasing number of people questioning that the Holocaust happened that didn't fly from the sky. So this is really something we need to, as I said, the EU has been the only one aiming to regulate the business models of the big platforms, social media platforms. We would love to see that practice spreading elsewhere. And also when it comes to artificial intelligence, to prevent artificial intelligence invading the lives of humans. We want artificial intelligence to our vacuum cleaners and the cleaning windows and the doing all sorts of things, but not to think and write books for us as it's happening. I don't want artificial intelligence to write our essays.
Yeah.
But this is happening, yes.
Anna, you wanted to underline something regarding the... Yes, of course.
Yes, thank you for the question, because it's very inspiring. We definitely could have another panel only on that topic. But I would just like to add up on everything that Jasna said, and that is regulation is one thing, but also self-regulation is going to be necessary, because we have now Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act, Artificial Intelligence Act, etc. But without the companies and without the tech innovators that are actually putting online different AI tools, and without their responsibility for everything they're doing, we just cannot hope for some good effect for the audience. And I would just like to maybe give you something for further research, and that's the term dark pattern. That's something I think that Jasna was talking about. So dark patterns may be something that might be interesting to you, and that's all those mechanisms and strategies that our attention gets snatched from us, and we are not aware of that. So yeah, maybe just something for
Miliana?
Yes, just shortly. Before the EU elections, we, together with colleagues from Europe, were monitoring disinformation about the elections. And we expected much more AI content, but there wasn't so much. So we were frightened and panicking before, but still not the time for it. I'm worried because when I'm thinking about the AI, I'm thinking about our data, in which way they can be manipulated from institutions I don't trust or people in power I don't trust, for example. And the other thing, what we are trying to do is to shift the burden of proof. Like if you are giving me audio, potentially AI generated, with the voice of some politicians talking some gibberish, which we can affect elections, I'm gonna ask you to prove me that's right, not me to check it, because it's impossible to fact check the audio, or 100% true or false. But you should prove it if you are going public with something like that. So we're trying to shift, the debate, because it's complicated for all of us.
It's really nice to hear it on the EU level, but I don't know if you followed the national elections in Italy. And we should have had today the guy who developed the entire research about disinformation, the deep fake content used by political elites in the very campaign during the national elections in Italy. So when you say about entire Europe and now European elections, etc., what happens when you have national elections such as Hungary or Italy? Why Europe has why do they close eyes when they do know, and there are proofs for civil society that there are deep fake and fake news and disinformation used in the very electoral campaigns.
You had it here
I'm
also.
sorry, I had here, I don't want even to mention, everyone knows that. I mean, we are developed by, this is completely different story. But when you talk about EU regulations, no, this is just a question without, I don't want you to answer because we will have another 1 hour. This is your podium now. Do you have any questions? Students?
All clear.
Okay, we continue with the program. Now we go with the music intermezzo, I think, and then one-on-one with Arnonom Grunberg and the reading. So enjoy your time for the next couple of minutes so Jelena can come. And then after the music intermezzo, we are one-on-one with Arnonom Grunberg. Thank you.